Good afternoon. This is Spirit Journey, and today's Monday. I was just going over the concept of the tree of life, and in a past video, I discussed that the tree of life is really the foundation of the hologram world that we possibly live in. It is the root foundation, and the tree of life is composed of a circle within overlapping another circle, and that is the Visca Pisces. And then a cluster of these Visca Pisces is what forms the symbol for tree of life. And then, in contrast, I mentioned in another video about the tree of the knowledge of good and evil that is discussed in the Bible, in the book of Genesis. And in the analysis of these two contrasting themes or events, I'm thinking that in our world, there was an initial life for human beings. And this life was taken from another life and adjusted. As they say in Genesis, that when the Elohim said, "Come, let us make man in our image." Now, I always thought that the Elohim / God was saying that they were going to create something from scratch called man / Adam. But then I'm thinking something else. It's another concept that was shared to me. And they said that even some of the rabbis really believe that this Elohim was not creating something from scratch and said, "Come, let us make man in our image." Like, let's do this project. Boom, and they created. But no, they are suggesting that they are already looking at a being, some life force, and pointing to it, so to speak, and say, we're going to take that Adam and we're going to tweak it and have it look like us and function for us. And then this tweaked being was placed in a garden. But there was a different hologram choice. So it's like a playing field, and you have observers, and it's like an experiment. And they were given instructions, but as you know, in the book of Genesis, what happened? They were instructed not to eat of the tree of life. And then my mistake. They were instructed not to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. But everything else they were permitted to eat. So, but as you know, that they did eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And this tree of the knowledge of good and evil, I'm thinking, is another holographic world. The world that the Elohim didn't want, this Adam and Eve to partake. But it was there in the garden. Because again, where this planet was, I believe this planet was somewhere else. And I believe that this Adam means red. And there are red planets. So I think planet Mars is the red planet. And I think he was formed there. So they did eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and it only became complete, this disruption, when both of them ate it. When just Eve ate it, it wasn't that big switch of awareness. But when Adam partaken of this tree of knowledge, that's what locked them in, and they both got locked in. And I don't understand why it needed both of them to partake of it and to lock them permanently in that system of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. I also mentioned that in past videos that this tree of knowledge of good and evil has to do with the duality system that we currently live in, and that there is a strife between that being, that serpent that approached Adam and Eve, and then you have the Elohim. So the Elohim and that serpent are two different factions of systems, and for whatever reason they wanted to use man, but the serpent wanted to thwart the plans of the Elohim. So by default, because they ate of it, Adam and Eve, that they're doing the work of the serpent. Okay, and in life, with like the Masons and everything, they worship these beings from this other world. Like it's represented through the symbols that these major religions, the Abrahamic religions, and that they all seem to be the same because they branch out of this particular ethnic group, what we call the Middle East now. And I was just noticing, well, I have been watching, or reading, I should say, the newest book by David Icke. He's a researcher, and he has a new book called Everything You Need to Know But Have Never Been Told. And he talks about symbols and what they represent. And he talked about he talked about Saturn in particular. And that Saturn has a frequency coming out from it. And on the North Pole of Saturn, there is I think we call it a hexagon shape. And that symbols, whether it be a hexagon, it means something. It's a frequency. So if you have a frequency, like a vibration, this frequency upon a particle, it will come into that shape of that hexagon, and vice versa. So the hexagon represents the frequency, and the frequency represents the hexagon. And so there's a worship, it's like your origin, your focus, your attention on this other world that has hijacked your system, your hologram. And this hexagon, if presented in a three-dimensional, is a cube. And then, now you have different religions that worship the cube, so to speak. Like in Mecca, there is where they worship, I think it's called the Kaaba, and it's a black cube. It's made out of granite, and then they put a curtain around it. And they walk around in a circle, giving all this attention to this cube. As I mentioned in past videos, that the act of praying, talking, and putting your focus on this object, this cube, generates an energy force. And that energy force is, again, because that cube is representing something, and in this case, according to David Icke, that this cube represents Saturn, that is setting out this frequency, this interference of our holographic world, and it feeds them. And then you have another symbol, the symbol of the cross. Now, if you take a cross, if you can just think of a cube, and that if you could imagine in your mind that if you peel open the surface of a cube, you will have the shape of a cross. Okay? So, the cross, which is now used as a symbol for Christianity, is part of the Abrahamic faith also, the same as Islam. And then in Judaism, they all also wear this cube, this black cube, on their forehead. And again, the cube represents Saturn. And also in Judaism, you have what they call the Star of David. Now, if you take the Star of David and you make it into a three-dimensional shape, you actually get the form of a cube. So you see, these three major Abrahamic religions of today are always fighting, but they're the same. So they make you think that there's something separate, something different from one another, but it seems to me with that information about that they all represent the cube and how Saturn has a hexagon shape on its north pole, this is saying something. So here we're fighting. So again, now, in contrast, you have the tree of life that we weren't able to partake in. Because remember in the book of Genesis that after Adam and Eve ate of it, and the Elohim talked to them and banished them from the Garden of Eden. Again, Eden means place of pleasure. It means pleasure. So that pleasure, I believe, was a different holographic system, but in that system was this other device, this tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And they were forbidden to eat of the tree of life. Because remember, the Elohim said, if they, at this point of their being, since they already partaken of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, if they eat of the tree of life, they will forever be in this state of the knowledge of good and evil state. So they're pushed out. And then I started thinking, can you have this new world system? And I think why this tree of the knowledge of good and evil, why it seems so appealing. Because remember, the serpent said, "You won't die." And you know what it is? What I believe what it is, that yes, you don't die. I think the serpent is talking about reincarnation. That's what it's talking about, I think. That you're going to partake of this. Oh, no, you won't die. But it's not saying you're going to go through reincarnation over and over and over again. And that's what's happening. And then the other thing what the serpent said, okay, that you won't die, and the Elohim just doesn't want you to partake of this tree because they don't want you to know a particular thing. So what is that they didn't want them to know? They're hiding information. So he's planting a seed of doubt in them, and that their freedom, which isn't freedom, reincarnation is not freedom, but it's a freedom is through knowledge. And you notice with the Masons and other fraternity places and sororities, it's always about acquiring knowledge and more knowledge and more knowledge, and then getting reincarnated again and completing a cycle. And before you know it, you die again. It's a curse, and it's a real entrapment. And that this serpent, wherever the serpent is from, is not on our side of elevation, even though we think through this knowledge, but the knowledge leads to a pit of despair and death. So somehow we have to learn about this new tree of life, to attach ourselves to this tree of life, or maybe this tree of life, if it's a hologram, why live in a hologram? Why not live in the real reality? Why live in a hologram? Why? Because you're enclosed in something. Maybe, rather than the tree of life, and I know I mentioned in several of my videos that, we're part of this tree of life, or I should say the first holographic simulation. But maybe we should go beyond this simulation. And it said that we are actually energy. Should we go to the source of this energy life force that we belong to? And maybe that way we can get out of the hologram, this hologram of illusion, this hologram of pain and despair. This is just food for thought. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.